The sky tore open in silence, the kind that presses against your ears and makes you feel smaller than the gods who watch from above. And when the wreck came tumbling through the clouds, the local tribes turned their eyes skyward. The moment its fire lit the dusk in shades no night should ever hold. They gathered in silence around the crater, not daring to step forward. Not yet. And from within that molten wreck came the hiss of something alive but unfamiliar. It was not machine alone, nor flesh alone, but something melded in armor of starlight, cracked open by the fall, and out crawled a figure more burnt than whole, breathing the air like it was his last act of defiance. The Iliari scouts were the first to arrive, swift and cloaked in shimmer blades and dust clouds. And they raised their weapons with breath held tight. For this world had rules, and one of them was simple. Nothing from the outworlds ever survived this deep in the veil. No one made it to the Valley of Hearts unless they were invited, and he most certainly was not. The scouts advanced as one voice, dripping with command and curiosity, declared themselves and shouted the question that had echoed since the fall. "Why aren't you running, human?" And his answer was nothing. Just a look, just a rise of the shoulders. Like what they held could not touch him, like he had nowhere better to be. Her name was Virelin, captain of the Bloodwind, the twin-souled huntress whose blades had silenced the breath of 3 betrayer kings and 2 godlings in her prime. Her hair was ashfire, her armor kissed with the blood of honors long past, and when she saw the human standing, unguarded, unworried, in the mouth of a smoking grave, she landed with a force that cracked the ground and stirred every watcher into silence. Her people circled the wreck, but she alone approached, blade drawn, voice sharp. "Why aren't you running, human?" And this time, he spoke not with volume, but with a tone that bent space around it. He said, "I have no reason to run when I have already lost everything." And even the air seemed to inhale at that, and her second heart skipped the rhythm it was born to beat. Because those words did not come from fear nor defiance, but from a sorrow so still it felt like prophecy. The kind of sorrow that turns warriors into wanderers and wanderers into myths. She sheathed her blade, but did not move closer, her voice quieter. "What did you lose?" And he looked at the stars that had betrayed him and said, "I lost a war I didn't believe in, for a home that forgot my name." They brought him, bound but unbroken, to the seat of Veilthorns, where truths are stripped from the soul and cast like metal into judgment. The elders watched him from their hovering thrones, their eyes set deep in ancient scars and thoughts older than the sun. They asked the questions that mattered. What are you? Where do you come from? Why have you disturbed the slumber of this valley? And why aren't you running, human? And again he gave no resistance, just truth. "I am a remnant of a dying fleet. I come from a planet that sold its future for a breath of glory. I disturbed nothing. I simply crashed. And as for running, there is nowhere left to run from, and nowhere I need to run to." His voice rang without echo, without shadow, and still they pressed. "Why not fear us? Why not beg?" And he looked at them with hate, not with pride, but something gentler, a kind of respect for what they had the courage to protect, and said, "Because maybe you are my punishment, maybe you are my end, and if that is so, then let it be seen, let it be clean. I do not fear judgment, for I have already judged myself." Virelin sat by the pool of Galari, where the starlit waters remember and reflect not your face, but your truest memory. And she watched as the surface shimmered with his pain, not the crash, the fall, but the years before it. The sound of laughing children now turned to ash, the voice of a mother fading behind a sealed door, the hands of lovers reaching as alarms screamed above the city. The memories flickered like candlelight blown by the breath of fate, and as she watched, her heart beat unevenly, for in him she saw not just a warrior, nor a broken thing, but a survivor who never chose to survive, and yet did. A man who walked the halls of a crumbling civilization with eyes wide open, and still chose kindness when everything begged for rage. She asked softly, How are you? Still gentle? And he did not answer, not with words, but with a touch to the water that showed a memory even deeper than all the rest. A child not his own, curled beside him in the smoke, asking, "Will it hurt?" And he had said, "No, not if I am with you." And he had held them through the storm as the stars collapsed above. When the Queen Mother called him forth to speak before the throne of the 9 flames, he stood unshaken as the flames licked the edges of his trial circle. The alien dignitaries leaned in to see the human who would not flee, who would not fight, who simply was. And she leaned forward with eyes like galaxies and whispered, "Why aren't you running, human?" And this time, he answered for all to hear, because no one ever stopped to listen before. And maybe if I stand still long enough, someone will see what remains is still worth saving. And silence spread like oil across water, thick and undeniable. And she saw it then, the thing that could not be faked, the grief, the grace, the gravity of a soul unsplit by vengeance or pride. And she declared not guilty, not prey, not prisoner, but possible. And that word shook the court more than any verdict they had ever rendered. And Varellin, who had followed him from wreck to seat to trial, felt both of her hearts crack open like dawn cross an endless desert. He did not ask to remain, nor plead, nor weep. He simply walked to the edge of the skyflower cliffs and stared as the wind pulled at the remains of his ship, the scorched metal left as offering to the gods of second chances. And Varellin came not in armor, not with blades, but in the soft robes of those who no longer wore. And she sat beside him quiet for a long time before she asked again for the last time, "Why didn't you run?" And he looked at her with something new in his eyes, not pain, not loss, but the ghost of hope, and said, "Because someone here needed to see that we can stand, and we can stay. And not all who fall come to take, and not all who wander come to destroy. And because your eyes asked me to stay long before your lips ever did." And she smiled not with one mouth, but both hearts finally in rhythm. And together they watched the stars rise, not as threats, not as pasts, but as futures unwritten. And in that moment, the valley knew that a new myth had begun, and it would not be one of war, but of stillness. And the human who would not run, and the warrior who chose to wait and listen.